Utah sucks. Okay, not really, but that's what some people think. Now, there are some things and considerations to keep in mind if you're thinking about relocating here to Salt Lake City, or if you've recently moved here and you're debating whether or not you actually want to live here long-term and potentially buy a house. Now, we're going to cover 7 things today that, in my personal opinion, are probably the 7 biggest negatives when it comes to living in Salt Lake City, things you should absolutely be aware of. Oh, and make sure to stick around to the end of the video because item number 7 is probably pretty controversial and you might disagree with me. So I would love to get your feedback. Make sure to comment below which one of these 7 things do you think is the biggest negative to living in Salt Lake City. Let's hop into it. By the way, my name is Scott Willie. I'm a local real estate agent here in the Salt Lake City area. If you're thinking about buying or selling a house in Utah, make sure to reach out to me. My team and I service the entire area. Our contact information is in the description below, and make sure to subscribe to the channel so you can get the latest information about living in Salt Lake City. The first on the list, and this was my biggest concern moving here, is the overall religious affiliation in the area. There's a very strong religious influence, and that permeates through the culture, through the social norms, and just how the overall politics here is set up in the state of Utah. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has a very heavy influence here, which makes sense because Salt Lake City was basically established by the Mormons. As you're driving through the neighborhoods, for instance, you'll see tons of different temples and LDS churches, basically all throughout the Salt Lake City area and really the whole valley. So that's a big concern for a lot of people. There's definitely stereotypes that are associated with that. A lot of people are just concerned that they're going to be ostracized by their neighbors or their community if they're not part of the LDS community. That was certainly a concern for me and my family when we first moved here. We weren't quite sure how we were going to fit in or what we were going to think of the overall culture here. But that is probably the number one thing that people think of when they think about moving to Salt Lake City. Number 2 on the list is the weather. Now, every part of the country is going to have pros and cons when it comes to the weather. One of the nice things about Salt Lake City is we're in the mountains, so you get, for the most part, fresh mountain air. It is sort of more of a desert, dry environment. I'm used to kind of the East Coast where you have a lot of humidity. It feels really sticky and kind of gross, especially in the summertime. But here's what you should absolutely be aware of when it comes to the weather. We have pretty extreme weather patterns between the summer and the winter. So in the summertime, you can expect very hot climates, not nearly as bad as, say, for instance, Arizona, but it will still get into the 100-degree range, and it can get very hot and dry here during the summertime. The reverse of that is in the wintertime. We get a ton of snow here in the winter, especially as you start climbing elevation. Right now, I'm really just talking about Salt Lake City, which is technically in the valley, and we still get a ton of snow, let alone those places that are higher elevation, such as Park City, where they get much colder temperatures and much more snow. So if you don't like shoveling your driveway to get the snow out so you can actually drive your car, or if you don't like the slow traffic in the wintertime in the freeway because there's tons of ice on the road and that's just too scary for you, or something you're not really willing to deal with, then Salt Lake City might not be the best area. Now, to go with the weather, we also have to talk about the temperature inversion, which I have mentioned in previous videos, but something that you definitely need to consider, especially if you have asthma or if you have family members that might have breathing or health condition issues. We get pretty bad inversion layers in the wintertime where the air quality can really go down in quality during the winter months. So something to keep in mind. We don't have necessarily a ton of pollution like some of these more industrial or metro areas, but because of that weather pattern, it can be a detractor for people wanting to live here. And then last, when it comes to weather, is the overall elevation. Salt Lake Valley is roughly 5,000 feet, give or take, depending on where you're at in the valley. There's a lot of undulating terrain and a lot of hills and valleys. But because we're at a higher elevation, when people come to visit here and they're used to living at a lower elevation like sea level, it makes it much harder to breathe. You go on a hike and you get out of breath way quicker, or you go for a run in your neighborhood and you notice that you just don't have the same endurance that you used to. And a lot of that has to do with the elevation. Now, especially for elderly people or people that might be, on an oxygen machine or have, breathing issues, that higher elevation could be a health concern. It does take your body some time to acclimate. Number 3 on the list is the home prices. We have to talk real estate when we're talking about Salt Lake City. The market has appreciated like crazy here in the last few years. We're definitely in an appreciation market, kind of like those other major appreciating markets like Portland, Seattle. Salt Lake City has gone up a ton in value over the last few years. In fact, right now, the median sales price in all of Salt Lake County is like $645,000. That is a lot of money just to buy a house. And Utah County is a little bit cheaper, but not much better. You're still looking at a median sales price of $615,000. Now, when you go north, it does get a little bit less expensive. For instance, Davis County is around $580,000 right now. And we're not even talking about some of those luxury areas like Summit County, where places like Park City are located. The average sales price there is well over $2 million. So even if you're looking to live in the valley in Salt Lake City, you're talking very expensive home prices that's several $100,000 higher than the median across the country. We also have very limited inventory, which again increases prices. Basic supply and demand economics. When you have a lot of demand and a lot of people moving here, which is true, but you have very limited supply, you're only going to see house prices go up. In fact, right now we only have about 10,000 homes on the market, which sounds like a lot, but considering the overall size and population of Salt Lake City and just how rapidly it's growing and the number of people moving here, it's really not enough inventory to keep up with the demand. And anytime you have high demand, low inventory, prices are going to continue to go up, which is probably what's going to happen in the foreseeable future. Number 4 on the list is the overall conservative political landscape of Utah. It tends to be a red state and it tends to be very conservative. You'll see that sort of throughout, the laws here. For instance, the liquor laws, we have much stricter liquor laws than some of these other states where it's nearly impossible to buy alcohol on the weekend. If you want to buy anything over 5% BAV level, you're going to have to go to a state liquor store. They're going to be closed on the holidays. They're going to be closed on weekends. It can be, difficult to have access to that. A lot of restaurants have difficulty when they're trying to get liquor laws and liquor permits, especially in the downtown area. So if that is an issue for you, or if you're used to a place that's maybe not as conservative, maybe you're coming from a more liberal or democratic state such as New York or California, maybe Oregon, it could be something that you're not used to. The overall culture and the laws here might not be a good fit for you. Now, I know some people that absolutely love the conservative aspect, and that's actually the reason why they're moving to Utah. So definitely something to be aware of. It's a good fit for some people and not a good fit for other people. But that's how it has been historically, and it's likely to continue that way in the future. Number 5 is the roads / the coordinate system here in Utah. Something I was not used to when we first moved here a few years ago. I was very confused. Every time someone would tell me an address, it was just a bunch of numbers and letters and it didn't make any sense. 200 south, 500 east, or whatever. And it's like every single street has the same name, and it's just a bunch of numbers and it's hard to memorize. But I actually kind of like it now that I've gotten to understand the coordinate system a little bit better here. It actually makes it very easy and convenient to understand exactly where you are in the valley based off of these latitude and longitudes, which, by the way, is all centered off of the temple downtown. That's kind of the primary hub of Salt Lake City, and everything else is sort of based off of that. So when you're communicating with people, hey, I live, on 106 South, what they're really saying is 10600 South. So there's kind of some colloquialisms and just some common language that you have to get used to. But over time, I have noticed that a lot of people that relocate here have gotten used to that coordinate system. It's just something a little bit weird and unique about Salt Lake. And at number 6, Salt Lake City is a relatively small metro market. Now, it's by far the biggest city in all of Utah with a population of roughly 200,000. But let me put that in perspective. Dallas-Fort Worth has 8 million people that live within the Dallas-Fort Worth metro market. In the entire Salt Lake County, which is essentially the entire valley, there's only like 1.2 million people, and there's only about 200,000 people that live in Salt Lake City downtown proper. So even though it is the biggest city in the state, it's actually a relatively small area. Now, if you like living in a bigger metro downtown area, San Francisco, New York, Phoenix maybe, and you're used to that, a lot of hustle and bustle, or you like that downtown living, you can still get that in Salt Lake. Just understand it's going to be at a much smaller level, right? It's much smaller geographically, a lot less people, and just might take some getting used to if you want to live in a more downtown environment. And number 7 on the list, and this might be something you disagree with and maybe a little controversial, but I'm going to say that the ski resorts might be the biggest negative when it comes to living in Salt Lake City, and here's why. Yes, they bring a lot of money to the market. There's a lot of tourism that occurs. There's a lot of money that builds the economy here. And we have world-renowned ski resorts where people from all over the world will want to come and travel here. But this can be a negative for a number of reasons. Number 1, in the wintertime, good luck driving to the ski resorts. when you're in the middle of winter and everyone across the country and even people internationally will come to Salt Lake City to experience our world-renowned ski resorts. It can make the traffic horrible, and it can make it very difficult just to go up to the mountains with your family or friends to go skiing or snowboarding, or just to enjoy the mountain living up in the Wasatch Mountains. The ski resorts certainly bring a lot of commerce to the area, but I've noticed that it can also lead to a lot of tourism and a lot of, just outsiders, or, you get a ton of people staying in Airbnbs around here. Again, it's not necessarily bad for the economy, but it can be something that takes some getting used to, especially when it comes to things like the traffic or things like just having a ton of tourism. It's going to make the lines longer at the grocery stores, things like that. If you're looking for more information about the Salt Lake City area and the surrounding suburbs, you got to subscribe to the channel. I post videos on here every week that will help you understand what it's like actually living here in Salt Lake City. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is in the description below. Look forward to talking to you soon.